Did it do the recording in progress thing or no?
I
Uh,
shut that off actually, but that's another conversation.
Okay,
yes,
okay,
it did.
okay. Because I was
Yeah.
like waiting for it to say recording in progress.
We went through with Thea Martin the other day, Nick and I, and she changed like a billion Zoom settings that I didn't even know existed, prepping for PrintCom next month.
Okay, sweet. Okay, well, either way, it looks like it's recording. Okay, so I just wanted to make sure. Hello everyone. Welcome to Image Critique for our 2026 main PPA image competition. Uh, Tonight we have um, James Flashbart, who's a is it your juror, right?
Yep,
Like,
I'm a
yeah,
PPA approved juror and an IPC
yes.
juror.
Yes, I wanted to make sure I said your title correctly. He's also been Maine PPA's past president. He's won Photographer of the Year many times, Wedding Photographer of the Year. He has a extensive knowledge on pretty much any genre. So we're really happy to have him. He's going to also be running our image competition this year. So thank you very much, James, along with Nick Angelides. And then we also have Dean with us. Dean Bugai has also won Photographer of the Year. He's been past treasurer. Um, it's been a lot that Dean's done. So thank you for serving on the board as well, Dean. We appreciate it. So, and then the last person that we have tonight is Judy. And I always say your last name wrong. How do you say your
Mah
last name?
Mahalik.
Mahalik. I want to like say the ch
I
sound, so I'm
know.
like
I
I
know.
slaughter it like so. Judy Mahalik. Judy is a newer member. But what we love about Judy is that she swept so many awards last year in image competition, and we wanted to have her come and talk about these images and also kind of maybe share her experience a little bit if we have a moment because she went from not competing at all to all of a sudden winning, and that's a really awesome um, story to show that you don't need to compete for years and years and years to win. So, um, anyway, what we're gonna do is we're gonna start off with like the ones, the two, and then if we have time, go to like the twos and then the threes and the fours. So that's how come we had everyone label theirs in order of how they'd like it to be talked about. And James is kind of gonna go through some of that. A couple things coming up before we do that. Sorry, I'm realizing. I wanted to just touch on it in case we didn't have time at the end. We're going to be having an in-person watch party this year for image competition. So I'd love everyone to join us at Smitty's movie theater in Topsom. We're going to have a whole theater to ourselves. What's great about Smitty's is that they also have an arcade for the breaks. They have drinks, both alcoholic and non-alcoholic, and food. So it's not just popcorn and soda. So it'll be a really great time. And please, like, if you want to bring your kids, just make sure you register them. We have 30 seats available in the theater, as far as I know, so I'm hoping we can fill all of them. And I'd really encourage all of you to attend because we want it to be something that we do every year, but we have a food and beverage minimum. So if we don't get enough people to come, we can't continue to do it. So if that doesn't incentivize you, I don't know what will, but we want to see all your photos on the big screen. So thank you, and I'm gonna pass it on to James. So thanks, James.
Yeah, thank you, Rebecca,
Mhm.
for all the work and all the MPPA stuff you guys are doing on the back end with the board. Again, I'm James Flaxbart, and we've got our fellow panel members here, Dean and Judy. And Judy also was a top 32 in the international print
Oh yes.
competition this year for weddings. So congratulations there as well. Um, and yeah, we're just gonna, I think, kind of go through these. I know that you had mentioned kind of having these numbered, but I just threw these all in here together. We've got a total of like 30 images, so I think if we spend just a couple minutes per, do we have a end time besides when my laptop dies?
No, whatever. I think the biggest thing is just making sure that, like, if somebody has said something already, to just not kind of reiterate what they said. So if you, like, just when it comes to your turn, to just make sure that you spend time talking about something new that the previous judge didn't mention. So, um, I think that's it. So,
Yeah, so we'll just try
okay.
to keep things concise and on point. And for anyone who's stepped in, I can't see who's in here or not because I don't have that screen open. But my power is out here. I'm running off my laptop battery, and one bar of 4G from my phone. So if I drop out, then Dean's all set up to take over, or Rebecca. So um, yeah, thanks for everyone who did submit some stuff and just kind of had stuff for us to look at all together. It's not about the competition. We're just kind of here to learn and kind of get some ideas. And if you haven't entered Print Comp or watched it before, highly recommend it. I had some random crap of my own to show from like 10 years ago, but I don't have my computer. I've got my other computer, so here we are. But you start somewhere and you can really learn a lot through listening to the judging and that sort of thing. So, yeah, I think we're just going to go ahead and kind of kick this off. And I think the way we'll do this is we'll just kind of go through these images. And, if a juror has something to say, just go ahead and speak up and we'll just kind of talk about these images, what might improve it or make it more ready for print competition, just kind of a little critique. So just kind of keeping it simple and going from there. So we got this first image here of this bridge. Does anyone want to jump in and talk about it?
Hey James,
I
as we're jumping in, and apologies, I think someone else was about to speak as well. Um, I wonder if we can maybe take a moment to, just also talk about like some of the, aspects of print competition and readying images for print. I see some that have, a little bit more presentation and, kind of framing and borders and stroke, and some that don't. And so, and I also recognize that some of the like IPC rules have changed over the years, a little bit too. And so, I don't know if that would be a little too like too disruptive to just sort of the process, but I think for me when thinking about comments to give and helping folks make decisions about images, readying images, for print comp, and one of the things that at least initially stands out to me is presentation. And certainly, it's a thought about this image in particular because, it doesn't have that, typical border, and everything to it, which might be something that I would, consider for the maker to add on. But from your perspective, I was curious if you want to just talk about that for just a quick moment.
Yeah, sure. So, for anyone who's not familiar, Dean was kind of bringing up, everything we're doing here is kind of based off PPA's merit system and the elements of a merit image. So, what those are when we're looking at what we call a merit image, which is, something to be proud of. It's not handed out easily. That's kind of a high level of photography that uses various elements to kind of pull together a complete image. So, using PPA standard they're called the 12 elements of a merit image. So with those, we have impact, which is kind of the when, exactly as it's written, like it's something that hits you, whether it's a storytelling aspect. Impact can mean a lot of things. That just kind of that wow factor. But something that invokes emotion, laughter, sadness, whatever. Technical excellence, when we're getting into say, your proficiency of using your camera, talking critical sharpness, good exposure, all those sort of things. Creativity, it's easy to see a nice scene. I was joking, give me a couple on a mountaintop that's a beautiful sunset, like, almost anyone could take that photo with their phone, but it's when you're stuck in a, 7-foot ceiling Grange Hall and trying to do something creative, that takes another level of creativity. So, creativity is kind of one of those that's just like, oh, I can tell you as a juror myself, it's when you see something new, almost you're like, oh, that was, creative, duh. But it's something you're not expecting to see. That can always have a good impact on jurors. Style is another one, just kind of like how you stylize an image. Composition, obviously, kind of one of the key points of a quality piece of photography. Presentation, as Dean mentioned, which is, you'll see in a couple of these, like I could just kind of swap to one here where we kind of see an image that has a border around it. Just like if you go to an art gallery and you're going to see a print or a painting that might have this, matte border around it. So it's the same idea of using something like this. There's a few images in here that have it, and we'll kind of go over this. So it kind of is completing an image. So an image can stand well on its own. It's not necessary to be a merit, but it's certainly helpful if you're competing with PPA, just because, that is one of the actual elements of a merit image. So we're just kind of using something that I had, if I had my computer, I had some bad examples of my first entries, which are overdone. A good border, a good mat, a good presentation adds to the image, but doesn't overpower it. You don't want to, let's just take this B. If you had a bright pink border, that's all you would see, and it wouldn't add to the image. So you're trying to do something that complements but doesn't overpower. What else have we got? We've got color balance, which you want to have good color harmony, things that go together in image. Not mismatched. Color temperatures or things that don't add up that are kind of that we wouldn't expect to see if you were to be delivering to a client, for instance. Center of interest and subject matter are both two elements, kind of very similar, just, kind of where we land. And this goes back to composition and, kind of where you land on an image. What's the story that's being told in that? What are the primary elements? What are the secondary elements? Moving around an image. Lighting can make a break or image, how you use it, whether it's supplementing it or whether it is, naturally occurring, however you're using it is one of the ones. Technique, the technique you use to capture or post-process. And finally, storytelling. Like, does it tell a story? Is it impactful? So, all of these things can work together and they really cross. So it's not just they really work together a lot. You've got, again, impact, technical excellence, creativity, style, composition, presentation, color balance, center of interest, lighting, subject matter, technique, and storytelling. So those are the kind of things we're looking at when we're looking at discussing kind of what we were going to go over tonight as we kind of critique those. So it's kind of based on those elements, if that makes sense. Um, I think that was hopefully a helpful rundown. Dean or Judy, do you guys have anything to add?
Yeah, no, that was great. And appreciate the run through. And so I think that does give, everyone here just the context in which we're looking through. The other just caveat that I'd like to say, and I've said this in the past, as folks have heard this story where, our thoughts today are intended to be, guiding and helpful. And our thoughts are our thoughts. And, when you get into competition, the folks that are reviewing and scoring your images may think something completely different about that image. My one example is that I had an image here that I think helped me win landscape photographer of the year, maybe even my first win Tracy. I'm not sure, but it was an image that was called Split Personality. It was a leaf that was really kind of zoned in. It really had two different colors to it. The way the leaf grew was pretty interesting. Scored a 92, I think, in the competition here with Maine, and it did not merit in IPC. So it's within the eye of the beholder and the person who's viewing at the moment in terms of how images score and do. But to the best of our ability, I know at least James and I are have earned some degrees, Master of Photography degree. Judy, I'm not sure if you've earned your degree yet.
Working on them right now.
Working on it. Perfect.
Yep.
And so we're all having some level of mastery here that we're kind of thinking through. But at the end of the day, it's all about the person who's looking at the image when they're looking at it. So it's just a little caveat as we're kind of going through. But today we're really hoping to be able to just give some good feedback and some pointers and things to think about as you're preparing images for competition.
I agree with you completely. I've had images that I've put in merit image reviews that have been low, no potential, and then they scored a merit at state competition. Granted, I've done some work on it, and that's why I do this. But you never know. An image hits judges differently at different times, depending on their eye, their experiences, their perspectives. So do not get frustrated. If you're thinking about entering, I highly encourage it because I think it has helped me be a better photographer because I have a better eye for detail now. So I'm excited to look at these images and to give some feedback as well, because I think that some of these images have some really good potential, and I can't wait to talk with you about them.
Yeah, thanks, guys. I think that's a great point. I kind of say that if I'm doing a talk, specifically on images and stuff like that, where, take what is said with a grain of salt. Just like them, I've had images that did really well in one place, maybe not as well elsewhere. It varies because there is the human element. So, images are going to impact people differently. But I will say that having been on so many panels, judging images for different states or for the PPA level, panels end up being far more on point together than people realize. By the end of a competition, we're all within a couple points of each other when it's all averaged out. So, part of working together as a panel is you even out each other, and sometimes someone sees something that other people don't see. But at the end of the day, don't base the quality of your work simply off what we have to say. There's some really excellent work that might not merit at the PPA level or whatnot, but it's a great grounding point, and it's based off a lot of very classic art rules that are just kind of inherently existent in art by nature, just like mathematics, science. Like if you go to see old art paintings of the masters or something in Europe, you're gonna be like, merit, merit, merit. That's kind of what I experience, where you're like, you see all these elements work together, especially when it comes to posing and lighting. It's really interesting. So. Yeah, that being said, let's go ahead and jump in and just start looking at these. We'll just try to spend a couple minutes apiece and see if we can't get through them all. So, does anyone want to start off with some comments on this image?
I can. As was mentioned earlier, I'd love to see a presentation on this image. I think it would really draw things together. Um, I love the blues and the golds, how they are kind of a juxtaposition of cool colors and warm colors. I do think that the lights maybe are a little hot. The highlights are a little bit bright. You might be able to bring that down a little. And then the other thing I was looking at is in the water. There are all kinds of like sticks and debris, and I think that beautiful reflection, if you could get those cloned out, it would make it a stronger image.
Yeah, thanks, Judy. And some of the things that I enjoy about this, is definitely that reflection, the arc, almost making that perfect circle in the middle. The way that the, kind of walkway or landscape kind of swoops you in, kind of toward that to land in, it's really nice. When we think about, some of the technical pieces, at least on my screen on the right hand side of the image, there's in the just above where the water kind of meets the land, it's really really black. It looks probably blocked up, like you've lost detail there. So that might be something that would be pointed out. The other thing that I think would maybe improve this image is maybe a slightly tighter crop. And what makes me say that is that you have this one light bulb in between the two trees off to the right. That's drawing my eye directly out of the image. And so I really want to stay in the image and be able to kind of rest and enjoy, everything that you got going on there. The tree shape is really cool. And so I think that one light off to the right hand side is just distracting and pulling me away.
Yeah, so in that same vein, I think these are all some great points. I kind of have my critiquing hat on because I did like 25 critiques for MIR this morning, and kind of some of these things were mentioned, they're good. I think a couple good things, if you aren't familiar with things, or a couple terms that were mentioned, were like blocking up and highlights. This goes back to kind of the technical excellence and in the exposure, where essentially if we look at these lights, they're kind of out of range. So if we were to pull up our highlights and shadows, here in Lightroom, like these lights are what we call blown out, where they're, uh, you know, they're past the exposure limit. And then the same thing with like the areas down in here that you might want to bring up. Now, you can break the rules, so I think that's something that's good to keep in mind. If you're intentional about breaking rules, It's different. If we're talking like a bride's wedding dress or someone's face in the sunlight where it's got to get that real washed out white look that you can't bring back, that's not like a breaking the rule that you can overcome. So in this instance, it kind of adds a cool graphic art piece element to it. How do I turn these off? There we go. So if I thought of doing this in Lightroom just because I thought we could kind of adjust these. So I'm gonna adjust this kind of as we talked about, where let's say we take this and we were to crop this up, maybe even crop out these lights in the bottom, compositionally, if we're going with a center composition, kind of tighten this up in the middle. And then when we're talking about these light on the end, we can kind of get that right out of the way. And then, geometrically, even how we're not set on this, you could do something like, re-guiding this and having our lines, because when we're doing architecture, we kind of want the lines to line up. So, you know, based on this image, I would kind of maybe recrop it something along these lines, if that looks good to you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's great advice.
And it draws your eye more to the circle in the center when you do
Yep.
that.
Yeah. So, you know, again, take things with a grain of salt. And, I like to be honest, and there's a lot of images in here that might not, even with work, uh, reach kind of that merit point. But um, hopefully these like little things you can kind of keep in mind as you see and as you watch. And most of these don't have a presentation, which is fine. We can just kind of ignore that. But, we have talked about it. And you'll see it in some images that were kind of added in here. So yeah, let's keep going. So we got a really lovely kind of day of wedding image here. I'd say we got a lot of good technical quality to the capture. These day of things are where you're not set up doing studio lighting and you kind of work with what you got. And especially when you get some mixed lighting, it'd be difficult. But kind of going with some of those same points. In an instance like this, I would say, hey, we've got this person over here that it's nice to have these people in the background that are watching and kind of part of it, but this person being on the edge is kind of warring for our attention. So this is our center of interest and our main subject matter. That's kind of where we want to stay. And if we go around the image, that's where we want to land. So in this instance, kind of similar, just by doing cropping, I think what would strengthen an image like this is straightening things out a little bit. I know this is a little tight, so if you're the maker and you're watching, this is something that maybe you could, work with more. You might have more room on the edges to work. And honestly, sometimes when you've got kind of this mixed color that's a little bit difficult and you've got the emotion and impact you got going, sometimes black and white goes a long way to kind of making an image pop. So if I look at this kind of compared to what I started with, I would say that this is a much stronger image.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. And what I was also thinking about is, the crop definitely makes sense. I was drawn away by the young lady sitting, there watching. Um, that said, with the crop, there is this sort of empty door off to the side, so you likely may want to think about like darkening it down and perhaps or even flipping the image. I'm not sure if that would improve it, so that way you can kind of read into seeing all the couple dancing and folks in back. The other thing that I just see in the image it's probably just something on the back wall above that door, kind of in
Yeah.
between the two doors there. But I would say that a judge might see that as a dust spot. So you might want to, kind of clean that up a little bit. But, it's a really nice, like in the moment capture, of the couple's first dance. Love these moments as a wedding photographer myself. And I think the maker did, a really nice job capturing the image.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
on
I
that
have,
point with the juror, when you change something in an image, make sure we can't see it because that's what hurts you. It's better to leave it in. Like I see that it looks like I'm going to guess there was an exit sign because I see some graininess going up in the corner. Something was changed here. Something like that'll hurt you. And kind of on the same point, I think especially when I started off, I got nitpicky about these things that were mentioned, which are important to elevate an image or to keep distractions down. But, you know, one of the biggest mistakes people make is just to continue to doctor an image to death that's just not a merit image. So there's a lot of PPA that does that, and when we're judging an image, I can tell you that we've decided, depending on state or PPA now uses the merit non-merit system, like we decide on the merit within a split second. And then after that, we have to back up why we chose that. So unless we're sitting here challenging, talking about like, well, I would maybe, I see this now that we're looking at it, this stuff isn't as important as when it first comes up, you know, a juror can tell immediately, like, this is a merit image or it's not a merit image. Hopefully that makes sense.
I think I'm just gonna add one quick thing. I know you said, about looking for every little thing. One thing though that I do want to point out is on the groom's head, he's got a highlight. I keep drawing. I want to see their faces. That's what I'm focusing on is the emotion. So I'd love to see that little highlight taken out, just so you see the pure joy he has in his face, and you're not drawn up by that little spot.
Yeah, and what she's talking about here is we got what we'd call a little specular highlight right here on his forehead that I'm pointing to that you could maybe just kind of smooth out, do a little skin softening, just try to blend that in or brush it in a way that, doesn't give that one little point. Again, this is great lighting. And yeah, there's a difference between client work and competition work. This is a fantastic client image. It may not be a merit image. That doesn't make it a bad image. This is great in a wedding album. They might give you $1,000 to print this on their wall. Something a juror told me a long time ago that was a wise saying was, James, it's not the blue ribbons that matter, it's the green ones that matter. So, I just sold a print for a few $100s to a client the other day that just some random picture I took of my boat that I didn't even think is that great. But hey, someone was willing to pay for it because they wanted it to people to sign at their wedding or whatever. So, kind of keep that in mind that, these things don't grade the quality of your work on their own merit. Great. So we've got this next image here. Let either of you start. Dean?
I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking what I want to say. So just stream of consciousness, the impact is nice, right? You've got the couple there, nice light on their faces. It's a nice, sort of mood. You got like the candles in back. It's a warm light. It's, center of interest is definitely on them. That's all good. Um, you know, from some of the things that I'm thinking about, it looks like maybe the couch, like are we a little off kilter there? Like the couch doesn't necessarily seem straight to me. I'm not sure. And then, I think maybe a tighter crop or something, in there could also help. There's some distractions that I'm seeing, from the ceiling, the window in the background has some highlights and things on it. Um, those are just some things that are just sort of initially jumping out to me.
Yeah, I was gonna actually suggest, I don't know what it would look like to crop right down to the top of the curtain, because that white bar across the top just keeps pulling my eye away. I would try that and see what that does. And it's also, I think it's, as he said, it feels a little off kilter. I don't know if it's the couch or that line behind. But I do love the image. I love the impact. I love the emotion. It tells a great story. Um, I like the lighting. I like how soft it is. Um, I think this has some potential, but again, I would really play with some of those things that are pulling the eye away from the couple.
Yeah, and I don't think I really have anything to add on top of that. I think that you've got kind of a moody scene, good client image. Probably good that, we talk about stuff being blacked up or in the shadows. And I do have my screen turned down so I can save my battery as long as I can. Yeah, I guess there's more detail if I turn up my screen. But, where we've got a messy scene here, it's probably better to, keep our focus on your main subject and not going around in every crevice of the room. So there are times where leaving things in the dark are acceptable. All right, next image. Well, I'll start this one off. I think this is a great example of quality lighting here. I think we've got a very difficult backlit scene with the sun that's, of course, going to be blown out, but this is a great client image maybe has, if you tell a story with a good title, maybe even uh, could be a merit image. I think there's a lot of good technical quality. We've got great sharpness on our young man here, and we've got some personality. Shirtless. He's got a necklace on. Um, Compositionally, it's a little centered, but a little off-centered, and be careful of things like trying to shoot where the horizon doesn't kind of go right through someone's head. We joke it's like cutting someone's head off. Um, so either kind of positioning yourself up higher or lower to try and avoid that is usually the best practice to avoid going through someone's head. And I'd maybe, for if this was competition, maybe just clone out this, rope or whatever we got going in the background. But lighting is especially handled well here, where we've got kind of opposing from. It looks like someone set up a supplemental light to really balance out the brightness of the sun. So, our guy here is uh, our eyes drawn to him via lighting as opposed to kind of just pulling up the shadows, which isn't going to work on quite the same level. But yeah, great shot. Anything to add?
Yeah, I think to add on to that, and one of the things that I'm sort of struck with is, this type of image is one that, when it comes up in competition, the title can really help, kind of make or break, an image kind of like this. I've seen, so many of them where the title comes up and then you're just hit with this impact, and whatever the story is that's the maker's intending to tell, that helps really frame it. And we're at a bit of a disadvantage where we don't have those titles here today, but as you're thinking about prepping, the title can help really kind of sell what's going on with this young man here. The other thing that just sort of technically that I think about, when we think about posing and cropping, we don't, really want to, try to cut off at sort of like the limbs, or, and so I think the crop the way he is, maybe as close to the wrist, maybe just a little past, so you might want to come in just a little bit more, so it's not looking like his hands are cut off there. Um, but as James said, the lighting is really well handled.
I was actually just going to mention the hand, so you took that from me, which is great. Beautiful image though. What a cutie. Nice work with this.
Another portrait?
I
One
think
thing
it's
that,
just. Oh yeah, go
oops,
ahead.
sorry. One thing that
No,
immediately is coming to me. I love the expression on his face. Nice, relaxed. But the white lines to camera right for the grout, those need to come down a little bit because my eye keeps going there. You also might want to think about have him do something with his hands other than the position that they're in. Maybe have him like play with a button or play with like a watch or something. That always looks good. But I also think that his skin tones may be pulling a little red, but that might be my monitor. But I do love the expression.
Dean?
yeah, expression's nice. I think this is a really great client image. When looking at it, I can't quite tell, and maybe it's me, but as far as the lighting's concerned, it looks like there's some highlights kind of spattered around. And I'm seeing like in his arm near his elbows, kind of like directly in like the rib, cage kind of area. It looks like there are some like highlights lighting there that maybe aren't as prevalent elsewhere. So I don't know if it's like a speckled light or if there's a external light that's just hitting in the right spots or the wrong spots. From that perspective, but I'm kind of drawn a little bit, with those as well.
Yeah, and I think we've got some good technical excellence going on here, and good job with the lighting. We've got a great focus, a nice fall off to that background. The lighting again, similar to the last image, we've kind of balanced that with I keep trying to zoom in, but it's not zooming in that far because it's not the high resolution. But we can see the catch lights in his eye, which is really great. And we're clearly in a terrible lighting situation of like dappled light through trees, which I think was mentioned. But I think it was handled really well, especially for a client image where we've got great lighting on our subject. So again, this is a good quality piece of um, lighting to kind of supplement what wasn't great lighting. But otherwise, good points. We've got another looking senior portrait here. I'll go ahead and start off. I would say um, this one has a flatter feel to it, and I think maybe that's because I'd almost wonder if there's a reflector because it looks pretty bright, but maybe it's just naturally what's there. But paying attention, like the highlights, when we're shooting with a camera, and say if you're using a standard metering, your camera's looking for middle gray, so it's not looking for the right exposure. It's just averaging out what's the entire scene. So especially when you're shooting in high contrast, high highlight areas, you're going to have where the main issue with this image technically is we're losing detail kind of on the rim lighting and stuff like that. And we have a little bit of that background. So I'm gonna pass it off to Dean. Go for it.
Yeah, I don't know that I have too much to add. I think you really hit all the main points. Another, kind of really nice client image. Not sure if a judge might point out how his back foot is slightly cut off, kind of compared to the rest. From a posing perspective, having the back of the hand, I think is tends to be something that folks want to kind of pay attention to and try not to have, you know, from a posing perspective, having that back there. And I do think like the background itself is probably a little too bright, and so I'm drawn back to the like reeds on the doors and the flag and some things like that. And so I really want to keep my center of interest on him, and so we might want to like darken the background down to be able to help with that focus.
I think I definitely would remove the flag from behind him. My eye keeps going to it because it looks like it's kind of coming out of his back, and that would be an easy fix just to clone out. I do like how he's looking at the camera. I love that it's nice and sharp. You can see how blue his eyes are. Um, but again, just watch for those things that will pull your eye away from the main subject.
All right, great. Um, Dean, why don't you kick us off for this next image?
It's kind of neat. The I'm pausing because I'm taking time to kind of take a look at it. It's one of those times where I wish I could kind of zoom in because it looks like we have a little bit of maybe intentional camera movement or something going on there. So the technique applied is really interesting. And I'm enjoying looking around. I'm not sure what's going on with the foreground there, but it's kind of cool. Whether it's like an ocean and water moving, or there's like a panning kind of going on with the camera, and then the silos are there. The treatment to it, really soft, is really nice. Like it's got a lot of cool things that are going for it. um that said, as my brain can't quite figure out the technique applied, just given that, and maybe it's a field that it's super windy. Maybe so. And see, as I'm talking, my brain's trying to develop the story and kind of figure it out. And so kind of taking that, I think it's a really neat image. I'm definitely drawn to the dust spot in the upper right hand corner. That's super easy. Lightroom's got that feature now for like dust removal, and with like a click of a button, it just takes care of it all for you. So I would definitely recommend, doing that. But I like what's going on here, and I think it's got some potential.
I like this image a lot. I keep seeing different things in this. I'm watching it. For me, it almost like gave me the perspective that it was taken from a moving car with that blur in front of it. I love the grain. It gives it a very Wizard of Oz feel to it. And I love the background with the different clouds, the different shapes. My eye keeps just going to different things, but at the same time, there is a really strong center of attention, which are the silos. So nice work with this.
Great. Thanks, guys. I just got my power back, so I'm gonna stay on my
Yay!
laptop, but I was just getting things plugged in. I don't have
Woohoo!
internet, so I'm still running off my phone, but I can turn up my screen. So I was letting you guys go ahead and take over some talking. So, yeah, so I don't have a ton to add. I can tell this looks like it was taken from a moving car. So on a technical level, there are some issues with um, the sharpness. Again, I don't know what can be seen over Zoom versus what I have right in front of me. I think it's pretty high quality, but if I were to recommend, this is something I would consider is we've got this white spot on this edge. It's not really adding to the composition. I would either try to remove it, depending on the rules of what you're entering, or if you have more room for cropping. And I would consider something like this that I think is a stronger composition, or even this is one of those scenarios where you could flip it and kind of have it land on the right. And
Mm.
it might work kind of in that direction. So if it were me, I think that's a slightly stronger composition than as it was presented. But again, that's my opinion. So, and at this point, we've got still quite a few images to go. So let's try to pick up the pace a little bit as far as our comments and just tighten things up. Judy, would you like to start?
Sure. I love the colors in this one. Very fall. I like how the cabbage is on the left. My eye goes right to it. I'm looking at that as being the center of attention, but I also like the pumpkin down the bottom right. It's just a very nice still life. I would personally have taken out the dead leaf on the cabbage just because that is distracting me, but interesting image.
Yeah, it's an interesting image with a lot of pleasing elements to it. The colors and everything that are going on are very nice. Um, I think this is certainly one to, enjoy. And if this is one that that the makers made for for someone, they would definitely enjoy it from a competition perspective. I think from the lighting, from my eyes are drawn to the very, kind of bokeh out, very kind of highlighted, or very saturated, kind of leaves in the background that really draw my eye, kind of right back there and sort of compete it from keeping in, the kind of mean sort of, kind of cabbage area.
Yeah, great comments. Not much to add. I think like it was mentioned, there are things that are for competition and things that aren't. And I do think this would kind of be short of a merit image as far as just having the impact and subject matter to kind of carry on to that next level. All right. Um, This has a great photojournalistic feel. I like the black and white tonality that's used here. Even though our sky, you could say, is washed out, it's probably a cloudy day. It's not distracting. You've got some great elements of geometry going on here with the architecture. Um, and kind of the one thing I would mention is uh, there's great impact on this, both in their faces. There's kind of a natural joy to the image. I really wish I could essentially crop it bigger and have their feet. So we don't want to cut off the feet. And honestly, the fact that she's holding a cane, I think kind of really adds the impact of the storytelling. Whether there's a condition or she's injured, it's kind of part of the story. So I'd like to see more of it. And then from there, just kind of trying to, we don't need every vertical to be perfect, but just kind of paying attention to framing and that sort of stuff. Anyone else?
Good comments, nothing to add by me.
Me either.
All right. Um, so here's one where I like to make a comment, particularly on the presentation that I might have touched base on earlier on is less is more. And I think that using color can be difficult to do well without being distracting. Um, And in this, kind of having this green with the orange and kind of the larger keystroke, I think is probably a little bit much. Maybe a larger matte and far more toned down. But there's good technical quality to the capture here and what we've got in the color of the leaves. Maybe not quite enough impact to kind of elevate that to like a merit level, but there's some good qualities to the capture.
Yeah,
I
agreed.
think, go ahead.
Okay. Struggling with a little bit with center of interest. I'm not sure where the maker wants me to land. From the presentation, the strokes a little too thick, and just to jump on, kind of James, point of um the presentation. I've earned my degree using just black with like a very like 1 pixel, white stroke or pulling, a color from the image. Every image I've done has done that, and that's been great. So PPA, landscape photographer of the year, 3 or 4 times, I think, 2 time Win Tracy Award, 100% less is more.
I think this one, the composition, is getting me a little bit. I wish that yellow leaf was up a little higher than the other two yellow leaves to the right, because I think a diagonal composition would make it a little bit more interesting. Again, trying to find, I assume that yellow leaf is the center of attention, but it's not clearly defined. Love the colors though.
Yeah, this is a really great capture. We've got this winter scene here. I assume that's like a Christmas wreath on it. Um, Kind of a long enough exposure to get both the twilight of the my internet connection's unstable. Are you guys still hearing me?
Yeah, you're a little garbly, but we can understand you.
Okay, it just popped up a little notice. That's why I was I'll let you, like I said, keeps continuing to probably go ahead and talk about this one, Dean.
I think we're all good, so we can go on to the next.
Uh-oh.
Oh, I think we lost James.
Okay, let me see if I can pull up mine. We can keep talking. Oh,
I have it.
you have that one image? Okay, great.
Yep. And so I think I can get into similar view. And
Do you want to pull
so
up?
you want to
Yeah.
make me co-host?
Okay, here we go. Here.
Oh, James is back.
I'm
Are you good,
back.
James?
I think so. It just went.
Oh, there we go. Your sound's so much better. So, yeah. Okay.
Okay. I think it
Okay.
switched from 4G to 5G and then kicked me out. Give me just 1 second. Is the regular internet back on? Okay, I think my regular internet's back. So let me switch just real quick. Kicks me off or not. All right, am I still here?
You
You're
are,
here.
yeah?
All right, I'm gonna go back to sharing this. All right, are we back where we were?
We are not seeing anything shared.
Did I get undone as the?
Um,
No, you should still be co-host.
yeah.
Oh, that was weird. Can you hear me now?
Yep,
Can hear you.
we can hear you.
All right, sorry, let's try this again. I think it was just the reconnecting to a different network. How is that sharing now?
It's starting. There
Working
we
There it
through
is.
there.
go.
There we go. We got it.
Dun, 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 dun. Thank you, Main Winter. All right, I'll minimize this. How do I make you all smaller? There we go. Perfect. All right. I'm sorry. Did the discussion of this go through? Did you guys
Not
talk?
yet.
Not yet.
We're just starting it.
Okay.
And I'm
Um,
happy to lead off.
Go for it, Dean.
Quintessential, perspective of Portland Headlight. I know this one well. And so you got a lot of really good stuff going on here. As the maker, I do like how the rocks, kind of leading up to create this nice kind of kind of leading you right into, the reef, there. The reef might be a little hot. And so I'm not sure if you can tone that back, a little bit to get a little of the detail in there. Perhaps not. May not necessarily be a deal breaker because I think the scene is pretty well balanced from a lighting perspective, but that's definitely something that I kind of picked up on and noticed there. But the leading line, kind of getting right into there, is really nice. Some of the stars that are there is a nice addition. The clouds on top are a little heavy, and so you may want to consider cropping down into it a little bit, because it is just, probably a little bit too dark there, although it's probably natural. the one thing that as a landscape photographer, knowing this area really well is like you can get really focused on, well, this is the scene and these are the elements, and it's really nice. But I'd say that those two kind of gray rocks that are off to the left hand side are super distracting and just pull me right out. So you want to probably treat that and darken them down and help them blend in with the coloring of the rest, just so that way I'm not, thought to cut, and my eyes don't want to be pulled over there, because there really isn't much, kind of in that space, in terms of it of an interest. The money is really, with that nice, brighter gray rocks kind of leading, off to the right, and then up into the lighthouse there. The buoy there, I'm on the fence in terms of, do I
Yeah.
like it? Do I not like it from a competition perspective? I do think it's far enough away from the edge that it's actually kind of grounding and gives me something to enjoy kind of off in the distance. So I think I'm leaning toward I like it. Though, some folks may say, that may compete, and so with that, I'll pass it over to Judy.
Um, the only thing I love the lines. I love that you mentioned that. But it seems like there's a lot of rocks there. I wondered what it would look like if it was cropped up just slightly. You still get that leading line, but that bottom left-hand corner is pretty heavy with rocks, and my eye keeps going to that because it's the biggest um, grouping of things. I don't know if that makes any sense, but um, it just feels like I want my eye to be up at the lighthouse and not down on those rocks. Yeah, I know. I was on the fence about that buoy too. Yeah, there we go. I like that. But again, that's a personal preference. I do love the blue sky and I love the red roof. I love the color grading on this. It's gorgeous.
Yeah, when you're doing your cropping, pay attention to your grid lines and
Mhm.
use your rule of thirds and find
Mhm.
things that work. So all the comments here were good. For this, it would be a bummer to cut off kind of the edge of those rocks.
Right.
So I'd almost would want this back. One
Hmm.
thing I want to note, our rules for Maine have not changed hardly at all this year. But if we're talking, for instance, international print competition rules, those are a little more strict. So when we're talking landscapes and removing stuff, that is actually not allowed. So if you were entering IPC, for instance, landscapes, to be honest, I love this about those changes as they're following the World Cup standards more, where
Hmm.
you cannot remove anything in an image for wildlife, landscape. So when we talk about removing the buoy, that's not allowed. You can do that at the state level. And you can still do it in MIR unless you're in reportage, which is the photojournalistic category, that you're only allowed to dodge, burn, do basic cropping and color correction, but no adding or removing or AI or anything of the sort. So, just kind of a side note for anyone listening, and kind of, depends on what you're entering, what you can do. So, great.
James, just with that, does it matter? Because like there's the illustrative category that you can enter into, which is pretty much a catch-all for anything, right? And so you could, do that. But if you're going
In if
specifically for landscape,
Yeah,
then you won't be able to.
all of this we're kind of like in the naturalist category. So if you're talking reportage, if you're talking landscape, if you're talking wildlife, uh, natural portrait, there's quite a few categories in IPC that you cannot do that level of doctoring, as I would call it. If you're in the illustrative category, you can do whatever Photoshop stuff you want. Um, but that's yeah, hopefully that makes sense. All right. Let's take this this family of shepherds here.
Yeah, I mean, kudos to the maker for getting all of them.
Yeah.
I'm assuming it's all in one shot, and to get them all, participating and looking at the camera. The one, the one shepherd in the tutu is hilarious. I think this is something where title can really sell the image. I do think the background is way too bright. And I get it. You're in a nice wooded area. during the daytime. But I do think that the highlight, some of the highlights of the trees and the brightness of the background really draw me away from these awesome dogs. Um, and presentation, the black is probably, kind of potentially a better choice, but I do find that this is pleasant and kind of fits in with the overall, kind of mood of the scene.
I think I might try cropping this one down a little bit right above their heads so it's a nice long vertical
Yeah.
crop. And the second dog camera right in, there are some hot spots on their fur. There must have been some dappled light coming through the trees. You could easily remove those so they're not as distracting to the eye. Um, but great job. I don't know how you did it. Whoever the maker is, like 5 German Shepherds looking all at the camera. They all have eyes on the camera. That's incredible.
Yeah, and I don't think I really have anything to add. I think what was said was a good point. It's kind of hard because this could end into a reshoot kind of deal, where the difficulty to overcome here is our main subject is so much darker than the rest of our scene, where they're otherwise in a good scene. So the only way to overcome in a situation like this would be to expose your background lower and use some external lighting to light the dogs. And then this image would really pop just because they're basically in a tunnel of no light. And the presentation note was a good one as well. All right, got this wedding image. I'll jump in that I would say again the presentation, good white or black, like Dean said, always good with. The one caveat I would note is trying to make sure it's not the brightest point. In this instance, I would
Mhm.
take if you're gonna do white and kind of go with that gallery look, is to pick a darker tone of the white so that your presentation is going to be darker than her dress. So that we're drawn into the dress and not out to the mat itself. And then when using kind of geometry like this, architecture, it'd be really great to not have the top of it cropped out and then just kind of straightening things up on these verticals. I mean, I know I've shot here at Grace a few times and it's a really cool spot, but when you use the architecture, you got to really know the architectural aspects of your composition as well as your couple. So it's a little bit more to kind of throw throw in there on you. Anything anyone wants to add?
No, that's exactly what I was going to say. I want to see the top of that door and the white presentation is drawing my eye out instead of into the couple.
Yeah. Nothing to add. Great image of the couple, great connection between them.
All right. This is again, don't want to beat a dead horse, but with the presentation, I think we've got such a fun portrait of this dog. It looks like it's like hair blowing in the wind, having the time of his life. But the presentation on this particular image is overpowering. So uh, the red I don't really see in the image, and it just kind of like I said overpowers it. And compositionally, it might be good to have a little more breathing room around our pup here. Um, but I like at the same time I do appreciate the tight crop. Maybe a different presentation would help. I would probably myself just go with a very dark, kind of just short of black, and then tone down these lines so that they don't stand out so strongly. And that would probably help make the our subject matter pop a little bit more.
Yeah, I love the expression of the pop. I mean, the maker captured it perfectly.
Mhm.
I keep kind of like squinting down and trying to see, between the two eyes, if the, camera left eye falls a little bit out of focus compared to the camera right. So maybe it's just if you had an opportunity for a reshoot, just a little bit, higher of an f-stop there to get, both eyes in good focus, but might be helpful. But, along with what Gene said, I love the pop. Fantastic
Yeah.
capture.
And
Absolutely
then
adorable.
again, a difficult part is when you've got whatever's closest to your camera, which in this case is the dog's nose, out of focus. It is a little bit hard to, it's probably not going to be a merit image. Is it a great image? Great image of this pup? Yeah. It's a lot of fun, but probably not Merritt. And then, another thing to note is just kind of our cropping here. You can see he's kind of just off center. It almost looks like slightly equal sides, but when you look at the face, you could tell it's just off, and it's just something that's going to be noticed.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, look at this macro of a bee. Um, this is another one where I think the presentation is actually quite fitting. I would maybe still go darker than what's currently in front of us, but that's a nice capture. Maybe almost shot through stuff. I'm not zoomed in super far because I didn't export it high. So we do have a bit of, for like a bright sunlight, it does feel a bit grainy, but we've got some good sharpness on our bee. Um, Got some nice lighting going on. Yeah, I don't have a whole lot more to say on that particular one, but does anyone else want to take it?
I love
Perfect.
the diagonal lines, how it leads down to the B. I might want to maybe bump the blacks up on the B itself to make the eye just a little bit darker, because that's what you want to look at is the B's eye should be the center of impact, a center of focus on the B. And then the upper left-hand corner, there's just a lot of yellow. So I don't know what it would look like if it was cropped in even a little bit tighter, just to get rid of all of that negative space up in the left. You've got some things going on down the right that are interesting, but it's just a blob of yellow in the upper left. So I would play with cropping on this one.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I think the yellow behind the B camera right it also kind of pulls outer way, and so maybe coming in a little bit closer, on that port too. And I'm not sure if, through some treatment you can give it more of the softer look, like what's in the bottom left-hand corner. But the color harmony and everything kind of going on with the image is really nice. It works really well.
All right, great. And there were a couple images that were actually skipped. And again, probably just due to time, let's tighten up our comments and try to shorten things up a little bit. I'm going to go back to a couple that we hadn't clicked through properly. We got kind of a photojournalistic shot here. So I'll start off that this is there's an entertainment impact to this that has that kind of voyeur look to it on a subway. Like this guy is not expecting to have his photo taken. The ladybug backpack really makes it for me, along with his facial expression. So kind of leaning into that with your title for the storytelling. I tend to like black and white for like those type of images, but the problem is you've got this ladybug backpack that's almost our main subject along with our guy. So without this, it's a little less interesting, but it just seems like not the guy you'd be expecting with the ladybug backpack. So, fun capture there.
This one you've got to come up with a great title because that will make the storytelling on this one. What an interesting capture. I love the guy on the left who's looking up at the stars or look he doesn't want to look at the camera. So he's looking away. He's also adding to the scene. Just yeah, fun image.
Nothing bad.
All right. Get out of my way, folder. Okay. Um, we got another outdoor kind of candid here. This is another one of those storytelling. This is a super cute client image, maybe not competition worthy, but that being said, if you can kind of pull the story where, I think what I like about this image is you got these people who are dressed in short sleeves and they're undercover, and then you've got this kid who wants to hang out in the rain and just, something how they're not a people person or they're done hanging out with people for the day and they'd rather be out in the rain. Where I'd say crop off the stuff that's not needed because this is a cute picture of this little kid. But if you could tell more of the story or had an image that showed more of the people and this kid kind of isolated, I think would elevate the impact of this particular image.
Yeah, I agree. I was thinking like a 4:5 aspect ratio might, help with the image to get rid of some of the dead space, and then also, maybe remove sort of the kind of back and hair of, the young lady on the left. But nothing more to add.
Yeah, I'm good.
All
You
right.
said it all.
We'll get another similar kind of photojournalistic, looks like a day of wedding shot. Um, I live near here, so I know this is Camden Amphitheater and it's got terrible lighting. Um, and you got this horrible dappled light. So whenever you're telling stories and it's not about the technical aspects, I tend to think that black and white, does better, except for the ladybug image, obviously. But I think that would help us focus more on our subject. We've got these, bright blues and distracting colors that aren't adding to the story, so it distracts from our composition. Um, and at first, it seemed like a not that interesting photo of a flower girl, to be honest. But then I see these old hands out catching this,
Mm,
petals of flowers that just suddenly made it very endearing. So I'd wonder if you had the ability to crop and tell more of the story of the connection between those two, which is going to be a bit of work, but if it were me, I'd say black and white, trying to isolate our subject and the connection with this other person could really elevate this image. Anything else?
I'm good.
All right. Let's see here. I don't think we did this one. Um, Looks like another one. Maybe it was even the same person, same wedding day. We got Camden Harbor here. We've got a great connection on what's an otherwise typical Maine coastal foggy day. So you don't have the fun dynamic lighting. You've got this flat lighting, but nice harbor in the background. And I would kind of lean into, if we're not gonna just have the tightness of the couple, let's see more of the scene if there's good scene to see. So if we're looking at our cropping, maybe if we had more room to show more of the harbor here on the left or even the right, and kind of do a mixture of having where we've got some nice posing going on with our couple, kind of growing that impact with the scenery.
yeah, I agree. I wonder if there's more, kind of images in the series that can, kind of add to that. I think they're a little bit too centered. And so I think we want to get them a little bit more off to the right, because it's a little bit of empty space,
Mhm.
there. Otherwise the nice diagonal kind of leading into the couple from the left, and down, it's really nice. She's clearly enjoying, the, kiss from her groom. There's some good connection, between them. Um, yeah.
Yeah, I think if there is any more image that you can use to crop on the camera left side, it looks like it was cropped right up to the boat. But again, I kind of want to see the end of the dock. I want to see that line coming all the way down through. I don't need to see the boats on the right side as much. I'd crop in a little bit more there. And again, try to get them into the third of the image on camera right side. I think that would be more a stronger image than a centered image.
Great. We got about a little over 10 images left, so we'll try to wrap these up and then open it up to maybe some other questions. All right, next image. I'll go ahead and start. I think we got a nice portrait here of this young gentleman here on the rocks, kind of clambering out there to use some of this Maine coast scenery. So, a good job in positioning. One thing to kind of consider, especially if you're looking to competition, but really just to, improve work, is posing. And I get it. Us guys don't even want to be there, so I understand the difficulty involved in this, but one thing, I know we mentioned straight horizons seems a little bit off kilter is one thing, and also a little bit off center, if we're going to be doing in that direction. But just kind of the posing, we have a very static, looks like he's got a smile and kind of one hand half in his pocket and the other just kind of flat on his hand, but trying to get a little bit of movement there so he's not just standing and directly facing the camera. Um, and then, we've got a little bit of shoot through, but it's almost to the point where it's distracting, and we kind of have the uh, reflection, but not all of it. So I'd also wonder if this would be a good option to kind of crop this up and have his head land more on a third, and not have the distracting elements at the bottom. So I would personally recommend that as a stronger composition for this particular image.
The only other thing I would do is the in the sky, there's a cloud that's coming down slightly, and that's pulling my eye away. So I definitely crop down below that cloud.
And there may be a technical aspect here, but I also did re-export these JPEGs, so keeping that in mind. But in this particular image, it's what appears to be banding up in the sky, where you've kind of got the colors don't blend from one to the other, which can be done, if someone does too much work to a sky, like say we go with the dehaze and you could see it like really accentuate there. Um, but that could also just be artifacting from what I did to it. So just wanted to mention that in case someone either didn't see that or they're yelling at me because they say it's not there, which is also understandable. So, all right. Um, Next image.
The composition with the trees is interesting, especially with the long shadows. The camera flares are a little bit distracting. I think I try to get rid of those. Um, I almost want to see more of the scene. So I don't know if there is more of the scene, if a more horizontal crop would be more of a portrait. I mean, a landscape crop would be better. But I do like the shadows. I'm interested to see this one in black and white, see what it would look like. Yeah.
Yeah,
Do
and
you
I
have
think we've got some
thoughts?
nice balance of blacks and whites. Going to black and white kind of I can't remember the Japanese art, but kind of where it's an equal balance but creativity in your composition. For me, this would fall short. I think that there's some good technical aspects. There's something the maker saw here, but it doesn't come together in a way where we have I can't see a center of interest or like a subject to really land on, something compelling enough that makes me want to keep looking at it. All right. Um, this is a really great creative art piece. So I appreciate the black and white tonal quality of this. We've got a good use of multiple layered subjects to kind of create a composition that I kind of keep looking at and look around, where, we talk subject matter and center of interest. Um, Center of interest doesn't need to be one thing. We don't need a place to land. Sometimes the whole image is the subject matter, and that's fine. In this, we've got a lot of, compelling things to work a way around through the branch, compositionally, and then, through some of the, well, look, little Pac-Man in the water, these lily pads. It's captured really well where there's a kind of a thoughtfulness where I can see the layers of the cloud, of the reflection of the tree, and of the pads all at the same time. And I think that presentation wise, if this was again going to less strong white, because I'm drawn to the outside, so either something closer to black or a much more muted white, I think would benefit this image a lot.
Yeah, and with that, I think a slightly smaller stroke, as well. And looking through the lily pads, I really enjoy seeing some of the texture in them. I wonder if the maker could bring that out more through some, kind of micro contrast, edits or some, kind of tonal adjustments, just to give a little bit more, kind of detail into those lily pads, especially the ones that are a little bit more white, kind of right of center, and then to the left underneath that, in the bottom kind of Y part of the branches there. But it's a fun image to explore. I really enjoy looking all around it and the way that the, reflection of the limbs play off of the lily pads. It's really pleasing to just, kind of explore and wander around with.
I do like that the trees almost do an X marks the spot towards the center of the image. My eye keeps coming into the center and then going out to the lily pads. I do agree with the fact that tonally I would try to get some more detail in those lily pads because there's something going on there that is interesting. I'd like to see a little bit more of it.
Great. Next image. This is when we're talking impact, this is one of those that has impact. You kind of be like, wow, it's kind of that instant reaction of, that's a really cool scene. Uh, so not just the moon, because again, we've all taken this big picture of the moon, obviously. It's fun to do, get out your long lens, but using it in a scene. And here the reflection is almost more powerful than the moon is, I would say. Um, For me, I think that I really love the tonal quality of the deep black with kind of the highlights, these bright orange highlights. Just be careful on the editing. Again, this is one of those that may just because of the way it's been fumbled around on this end of things, where there's some banding, it looks like, in the black of the sky. I did also notice that it looks like this moon, for instance, was worked on. I know these often can be composites because it's hard to nail the exposure. You can't do it all in one. But when you do that, you have to be really careful. In this, I could see the grain around it, which if I do something like this with the dehaze or let's say one direction or the other, something will make it pop. There you go. You can see how there's a square here. So you can't do that. Well, you can do that, but just don't do it so that we can see it. But this is a really beautiful composition regardless. For me, if I were to personally recommend something, I would consider cropping out this land on the bottom and then making sure you're kind of going to center it there. So I think that something like that would look a little better than it was originally presented with a dark matte, the smallest keystroke, and I think it's a powerful image.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, beautifully
100%.
done.
I was going to absolutely say the same thing about the crop. The little bit of land doesn't add anything.
No, it takes away actually. My eye goes there.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
heavy at the bottom.
All
And
right.
this is a time where, because the land is more like a silhouette, it works. So even though it's black and it's dark, you're not seeing a lot of detail. It actually works in this image where we've commented before on some of the other ones where maybe it wasn't intended to be as black and then we, were concerned that it was, blocked up. So, context matters, but
Yeah, that's a great
yeah,
point. As a juror, I don't need to see the shadows in here, but this particular silhouette isn't adding anything to me. It's just kind of
yeah.
a distraction at the bottom of the screen. So, if you had some cool trees or an overhanging tree over the moon or something like that, absolutely go ahead and try to use it. All right, Judy, you want to start?
I love this image. I love the expression on her face. Um, I would look a little bit at where the focal point is, where you actually focused. Her hair headband and her nails are very, very sharp, but her face seems a little bit soft to me. So I just watch that. I do like how you've got the pine needles coming in from the camera right side, almost pointing to the model. Um, I think that I would have just removed that little clasp on her neck in the necklace because that's kind of draw my eye there away from her face. So,
Yeah, I agree. And when you're shooting, I think that's something you can easily just sort of, hey, can we just turn your necklace real quick? Just so that way you don't have to, worry about that one in post. But um, absolutely agree that it would be improved to not have that in there. Love her expression, her hair, all spread out and wild. Um, I kind of like the fact that there's a tree limb or something kind of sticking out from her hair a little bit too, and so certainly there's an element of you know person in nature, and I think the kind of sticks and everything off to the left can be brought down a little bit. I don't know if that would make it too heavy, to do so because I think it's just distracting to see the stuff off to the left and in the background there. But bringing it down too much, I think might actually have an impact. So maybe I don't know if you can crop in maybe a little bit tighter, as well. I'm not entirely sure, but I do think that that's something that could impact, from being able to achieve it there.
Great. Only thing I'd add is the presentation, which again we've talked about before. Probably just too bright on this particular image, and then the key line here where we've got this brown or whatever. We have a black and white image with a white thing. I wouldn't add a color stroke. I would do a black stroke or a white stroke and make it small. I think Dean said earlier, just a couple pixels is all you need. You're looking for just the slightest separation between your image and your matte to kind of distinguish that. And of course, you can get fancy. There's lots of things people do, but if you're newer to this, keep it simple. It's certainly mats can be a pain. I hate doing them, but like Dean, almost all of my work is a pretty simple short of black matte or a short of white matte, and just a thin keystroke. All right, and just a few more.
It's a nice landscape image. I think it's certainly, reflective of the scene and something that, the maker, enjoyed. I'd love to be sitting there. From a competition perspective, I think I'd like to see this in full focus. And so to have that really, really, deep depth of field there. So that I think the fall off is maybe a little bit too much, because we have the tree, the little tree, shrub or whatever kind of in focus there, and then everything kind of falls off behind that. Where I really want to be able to, kind of focus in and like explore the full scene.
I think I would have liked to have seen a little bit longer exposure. I think if you got those wispy, white tendrils of water coming down, that would have done, it would have been an amazing effect to tell the story. I also would be interested in seeing what a lower angle of this would be. I think that might be interesting as well. I am the same with you though. I want to see more of the scene. I really want to like explore with my eyes.
Yep, nothing much to add. Again, maybe position it would be helpful to not have this bush here. Like if you were off to the right, if you're the maker, to kind of see full view of this would be helpful. Again, the focus. Um, and yeah.
And also recognize that might be Screwauger Falls, and you may not be able to actually get
Yeah,
over
true.
there because it could be pretty dangerous, from that perspective. Having stood up on those rocks myself quite a few times, um, so it's one of those things where if you want to enter something for competition, it's is this a competition image or is this an image that I really enjoy?
All right, next image, we got this old rundown stuff here. I think we've got um, a lot of intrigue in some of the impacts. I think for an image like this, time of day is kind of difficult. I think if we less of midday lighting would kind of create some drama and color that would help kind of make the scene pop. And I think compositionally, we need a little bit more room to breathe around the image as a whole. It's just kind of a little bit tight. We've got some, intriguing stuff to land on, but it's a little bit busy and maybe not quite there for a merit. I'd also, given the time of day, would consider, again, this might work as a black and white and playing with the tonality where you're like, oh, I can go down here and we could take this blue and kind of create some contrast by lowering that. And then in the background, kind of pulling the greens down or the yellows to kind of get these trees a little bit darker to kind of make different parts of the scene pop. Again, I'm just playing with this. I apologize if you're offended, but I think that creates just a little bit more impact.
And I think if you're going to keep it in color, I'd like to see more of a tonal range. I'd like to see the blues be a little bit bluer. I'd like to see there be more contrast. This would lend itself really well to an HDR image. Um, so I'm kind of like my eye that really wants this image to go that way, where there's more tonal range in it.
Yeah, definitely agree there. Or the black and white also,
Right,
to be really
right.
sharp. Yeah.
Dean, you want to take this?
Yeah. I think pointing out too, and I know James has noted a couple times, I'm not sure if it's a JPEG, piece, but definitely looks like there's some banding, kind of going through the sky there. But really nice use of exposure here. I love using the long exposure, with the water, smooth things out, get it really silky and almost this like kind of milky feel, especially around the rocks. It's very serene. I enjoy it. Compositionally, it's nice to have that kind of, seven pattern there, where I can kind of look up through and then kind of across, to be able to kind of wander my way through the scene. So that's very nice. I'd almost want something a little bit on the more on the left hand side in the background, just to kind of land on too. But just recognizing that there's nothing there in the scene. But I think those are a couple of things. I think the lighting overall is a little flat, and so love to see you work with maybe, some of the highlights and shadows. And, I'm a big person in Photoshop using the levels to be able to get, my whites and my lights to really pop. And then to bring, it's just another way to add contrast into your image to be able to, give something a little bit more of a punch and life.
Great. Next image. Got another landscape. This is another one I think comes down to time of day. We've got there's some things to like about this image, but most of our intrigue is in the sky, but it's only half of the image, and then our landscape has kind of lost all light, so it's a little bit past or too early for the rest of the scene. So maybe finding a way to balance that out or recropping. I'm gonna guess given these trees here, you probably didn't have the ability to move and kind of get these out of the way, but I think that'd be helpful. And then I'd work on doing a little bit more post-processing to maybe pull out and create some contrast and clarity. If we look, like down there in the landscape and can kind of, balance things out a hair, we're starting to get a little bit more impact and saturation in there without going too far. And then again, thinking about composition, we've got some nice stuff down here in the lakes. A lot of this isn't adding much, and unfortunately, it's hiding some of the lighting from behind. But maybe even if it were to be cropped in a little bit and going in one direction or the other with the horizon, so your horizon isn't in the center of your composition. So something like that might be a slightly stronger composition for this particular image. But overall, it's a lovely spot. Anyone else?
Nothing to add, James.
All right. All right. We got Mr. Hockey Coach Man. Anyone want to take that?
I will. I do a lot of photojournalism with sports. So this image really caught my eye. I love his look. I can't tell if he's like
Mm.
saying, "Why are you taking my picture right now?" or "Why are you in here?" or "I'm ready for the game." But the look in his eye is great. Definitely needs a strong title to tell the story. Um, I like that you have the players in the background. There looks like over his camera right shoulder, it's either a little haloing or something's going on interesting
Mm.
there. I don't know if we tried to tone down the three in the background. Um, but if this is going to be a reportage, you wouldn't be able to do much other than dodging and burning anyway. So just be very intentional with that dodging and burning. But yeah, I was trying to decide like, is the hockey player in the front with his stick distracting me, or is he telling the story? And I really think I would keep him there because I think he's telling the story. He's like focused and he's got his stick down. He's looking down the ground. He's ready for the game. So.
Yeah, great comments. And I think that, where where we get that impact and center of interest on, our main subject comes from the lighting in this particular instance. So, we're drawn to the brightest point in an image, and in this, it's well focused on his head, where we're probably in generally having a situation of terrible lighting that's out of your control. It works really well here. And maybe that's because some work has been done, as mentioned, just to kind of keep an eye on that. And again, playing with maybe some cropping or toning down the legs. Honestly, an image like this, there's only so much to change. It's as it is, as it stands. I'd be tempted to crop it in tighter. I love having the subjects
Mhm.
on the left.
Yep.
I think that
Yeah.
adds to the story, and then we kind of
Yes.
lead into it. So I would maybe try to crop it in a little bit tight. But it's one of those you just keep playing with it and kind of go from there.
Yep.
All right, we have the little baby.
Oh, so cute.
Very cute, adorable image of this young babe. I can't tell if it's soft or not. My eyes are playing tricks on me. I don't know, James, if you can see it on your side. Um, but super cute. Love the bun hanging out in there. Um, I do think the unfortunate, like the bed sheet actually kind of competes over the left-hand shoulder. It's really like that's the brightest part of the image. And so I think, we want to really try to tone some of that down. So that way I really kind of keep, on the baby and the nice, kind of expression and everything kind of going on there.
Yeah, I think that kind of nails it. I mean, if we talk about the last image, like the lighting brought us here. In this image, the lighting brings us a little too much here. That being said, obviously, mom and dad sees this, they start crying. You get them to put this on the wall for a couple grand, then that's all that matters. Because this is a beautiful capture. We've got some great posing going on here. The little bunny rabbit stuffy, the just gentle expression, the stylizing that goes on. We've got great color harmony throughout the image. You know, the use of those elements were done really well. If I were to say retouch this image, one thing is to really focus on your lighting, more in the shooting technique than in post-processing, to kind of get focus really to land on here and trying not to overlight your whole scene. So in this particular instance, it might be feathering the light past your subject,
Mhm.
so that more of the light lands on the baby. Because you know, when you've got the what's the rule I'm looking for? Inverse square law, where you know the subject, the closer to the light, the brighter it's going to be. So if you can kind of point that light past your subject, you're going to get a little bit more even lighting that might help in this particular instance. And then, you know, post processing, I'm going to do a really ugly job of it in the moment. But you know, let's say we reduce the exposure a little bit and try to find a way to tone this down. And then we're going to be a little bit more focused on that. Again, that's an ugly, quick job, but hopefully you can kind of see the difference where it feels like we're a little bit more focused in on our little guy where we want to belong for sure. Or, you know, you could even play with different crops to have this feels a little tight to me, but you know, it's kind of nice to have focus on our baby and not the background. But yeah, lovely piece. All right, two left.
It's a nice image of Owl's Head. Certainly enjoy it. James, I'm sure you know this well with being right down the road. These steps are, certainly, make great leading lines right up into it, kind of standing tall. It's a snowy day, and so there isn't much with this guy. Kind of that said, I'm struggling from an impact perspective here. Um, it doesn't quite have the punch that I'd like to see to be able to really kind of stand out to kind of meet that merit, perspective, for the image. I'm not sure if there's some detail in this guy that maybe you can bring back to give some of that balance there. It looks like there might be some color balance. Yeah, okay.
Oh yeah,
I
yeah.
thought I was seeing something there, but I wasn't quite sure. And, I think that that really helps if you're able to, bring in some drama into the sky and then keep the lighting prominent on the lighthouse. Like that can create some of that, impact there, within the scene.
And I don't know like how much of the steps that you got, but there are nice long steps up to this lighthouse that add a lot of drama when you photograph from the bottom. So I know we can't do it, but if the maker is listening and you have more access to pull back and get more of those steps in heading up to the lighthouse, that might be helpful for the impact as well.
All right, great comments. Last image. She's been sitting there for a long time waiting for a portrait.
I love how the snow on her looks almost like a doily like neck piece. That's
Mm.
it's a pretty cool capture. I would just watch again the presentation. The white, 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 white is drawing my eye away from her, so I would tone that down a little bit.
Yeah, and I would say, you know, again, this is one of those, it's hard to tell if it has the impact or storytelling to kind of elevate it to that next level. But if you could tell a story with the title and the snow and um, I think compositionally you probably need a little bit, we need to see a little bit more of what's around our statue to kind of tell a story. But um, yeah, those are my
I
thoughts.
see. Just one more thing. I've seen this a couple of times. I've seen presentations that are not even all the way around, um, kind of like this one. So just be a little bit more, I don't know, conscientious of how you create your presentations. If you want them to be longer or thinner, it needs to be very intentional. So make sure that you're just paying attention to that when you create your presentations.
And on that note, I'm gonna do a really quick, ugly job of this, and y'all can just laugh as I try to do this. When we're talking press, because I have seen what was just mentioned a couple times. So let's take this image. Let's edit it in Photoshop. For those of you who don't do this, and since this is recorded, I'm gonna do my best to see if I remember how to do this because I haven't entered anything myself in a while. Is just kind of making a quick mat, if that would be helpful to anyone watching. Let's see if I can do this, and if anyone can tell me. There's not one way to do this. You can buy presets, but let me see if I can remember how I tend to do mine. If I should, my laptop's, I don't know how fast it's gonna load, we'll see. But it is a JPEG. All right. So we're gonna take, oh no, all
Probably
my
need to
thi-
go through.
all my things are different than on my computer.
Oh,
Shoot, how do I,
If you go to window or
oh,
view,
oh, layers, that's what I'm looking
yeah,
for.
yeah,
There we go. All
yeah,
right.
layers, yeah,
All
there
right,
we
so
go.
give me a second here. So if we take we're gonna unlock this layer. Let's duplicate the layer. And then let's zoom out a little bit. I feel very pressured to do this. Uh, all right, I'm going to, again, this is the way that I think I do it.
I'm judging
Uh,
you, James.
that's, yeah, the judge away. That's totally fine. And we're just going to expand this, let's say, a couple inches and no, maybe not in relative. I don't know what
Notice,
I don't know what this actual size is. So let's see what this does. That did not, nope, that was wrong.
instead of
Uh,
canvas size, try going to image size,
Um,
I
no,
think.
No,
the
well,
Yeah,
the
canvas.
canvas
you
needs
want
to be
canvas.
bigger.
I
Oh,
I think
see, I understood.
relative, and then
Oh,
let
there we go.
add
Yeah.
two. That's what I wanted to do. Uh, well,
So I made it
that's
two
much.
pixels.
Oh,
I think
okay.
it
Oh,
pixels instead of like
I meant
inches.
to do inches. There
Yeah,
we go.
yeah.
That's what I had. There we go.
There we go. You're
Yeah.
good. You're right there. We see what you're doing.
All right. So
Yeah, that's
There you
much
go.
better.
now we've
Yeah.
created even mat, and then an easy thing you can do is now you add a fill layer,
Yep.
and we'll drop this below one of
Yeah.
the layers. And right here, you've got a reasonably easy mat. I'm not getting zoomed in where I want. And then from here, you could say create multiple layers and play with the color, or oh no, that's not the right button. Look at me being a big dummy in front of a live audience. All right. Here you go. You can take your color picker and you can play around like this. When I first learned how to do this, I would paint this whole thing and then realized how bad that was. Or you can, pick from within the image. Obviously, that would be too strong, something like that that's kind of dim. And then you can take your photo and effects, stroke, just a couple of pixels. Let's make this one white, even though we'll give it just a little bit up so you can kind of see it popping up there in the background.
And you can drop her from your image too and select the color.
There. And we've got if you were watching this recorded, you bet you can figure out how to do that twice as fast as me. And you can look it up online. There's probably 20 other ways to do that. That's a really quick presentation, Matt. And even in that, it's probably, that stroke's a little strong. I would, um, oh, I had the wrong thing. Well, you get the idea. Play with the stroke and make it a little darker so it doesn't, you want to kind of just see it, but you don't want to overdo it. Like for an image, especially this dark, something like that's probably good. That's not perfect. That's not 100% what I'd recommend, but yeah, that gives you a quick idea. All right. We have some questions, some thoughts, anything that you just shoot anything out there that you want to know, et cetera, et cetera.
And just in case that's somebody new who hasn't done this before, that name and watermark cannot be on an image.
Yeah.
What
That's a good point. Yeah.
what do you mean, Dean, with your micro contrast separation? What does that mean when looking at a picture? Like the tonal
Yeah.
separation, you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah. So it's just really bringing out the contrast in those smaller areas. And so, you know, the Nick collection actually has some pretty good tools in there to be able to help with that. They have like a tonal contrast layer that you can use to kind of play around with that, or you can honestly just do, your curves and your levels, within Photoshop. That's really how I do a lot of my, contrast editing is honestly through levels, and then using curves adjustments just to start to really, try to bring out, the to boost, the highlights, and then really bring in those shadows to create that kind of finer contrast in the smaller parts of the image.
Okay, I'll do my best.
Right, I got my real desk back, and my camera and microphone. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
My friggin' neck is killing me from staring down in the darkness at my top of my laptop. Like I got power back, and I gotta switch to my desk.
So I have a question. I took the picture of the Portland headlight, and the wreath on the light
Yeah.
was. I did two pictures for the because wreath was a lot brighter.
Yeah.
Would that make it so that it wouldn't be able to be a competition image because it's too late?
Main PPA rules don't require that. I think if you're thinking about it from PPA, the International Photographic Competition, and you want to enter it as a landscape image, that might be something that may be impermissible. But from an MPPA perspective, being able to utilize multiple images to be able to create your image is totally fine.
Okay.
Yeah, I do that all the time.
Hi, folks. I
Yeah.
just have a quick observation. I
Oh,
noticed some of the titles were very long, and I've been dinged for having long titles. So you might want to watch those and try and get them as short as possible.
Yeah, and in that note, when you're telling a story, titles are helpful. We like to say that titles don't necessarily make or break an image, but they can help, and they can hurt you. But kind of like a presentation, don't get too fancy with it. You don't want to distract from the image or confuse. Um, I can tell you just I was judging yesterday for New Hampshire, and someone forgot to put their titles in, and they were worried about it because they were being read out loud, and it was just not the title. But we talked about it as jurors, but we didn't want to. You don't want to change anything mid-competition because then that opens the door to you can't. It is as it is, and it's a learning experience. But basically, the discussion was, that's not affecting our score that much. Like not knowing the titles didn't hurt those images. Um, but in the same sense, like don't use a foreign language or something that's not going to be easily understandable. You get too obscure, then you just don't get it, and it's not really going to help you out. So there's no specific rule, but don't do a 2 sentence long title. Keep it simple. A few words tops is usually a good way to go. Um, it's going to vary depending on the competition, or I shouldn't say just competition, but where it's entered. So, like for instance, when I'm judging MIR for PPA, I see the title on my screen before I see the image, so I can read the whole thing. There isn't a title reader. When we judge in a few weeks or whenever it is here in Maine, um, we'll have a title reader. So someone's going to read the title out loud, and then the image will come up on the screen for the jurors. So you want to try to do it in a way that's whoever's going to be reading it, that it's pronounceable, that it makes sense, and it's not confusing. So. Yeah, good point. Anything else?
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
So if some of your photos wouldn't be good enough for competition, do you have to use these same photos for the competition, or can you use different ones?
You can use
Oh, if
any
you're
photo you
speaking
want.
if you're
Sorry.
speaking about tonight, you can use whatever you want. So
Yep.
tonight was just a little bit of a critique on whatever people wanted to kind of throw in to hear thoughts on, to get some feedback. Um, and if you want to enter some images in the competition, uh, you know, it can be whatever you want. So something that is helpful is to get some feedback from others on what they think. Have someone look at if you're wanting to enter something, then feel free to reach out to a friend or even one of us to do like a quick look through if you have a handful of photos and need help picking them out. I've had some of my highest scoring images have been chosen by a friend of mine who likes art, but they're not a photographer. And I'm like, all right, I do like that image, but I don't think it's going to do very well. And then it's like one of my highest scoring
Yeah.
images, and it's happened multiple times. So
Mhm.
That's
um,
awesome.
sometimes it takes an outside eye. Like, I'm a juror and I look at images. When I've entered things, they've done well as far as being clear, but the ones that are, have done really well have been from, my wife has picked like, oh, I like that image, or a friend picks it, and not a friend that's a competitor or photographer. So it's always good to get
Yeah.
impact outside of your own thoughts.
All right. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Any other burning questions from anyone? Anything at all? Um, I don't know if there's any particular comments. I know that there's only some of us here. I'm not sure who may or may not want to enter in Maine, but um, maybe I can put a video out there with some announcements. But as far as our competition this year, there's nothing major as far as changes. You can have up to 15 images. Just be sure to read the rules. That's the most important thing, to make sure your dues are in, to make sure you meet the deadlines. We're going to strictly adhere to those. So once the deadline passes, it's a little tighter than we had planned. Nick and I were going over it the other day. We were hoping to have some more time, but once the rules and stuff were out, we're good leaving it. But when the cutoff is good, so like, the day, I think let's do a couple days before print comp at like 2 p.m. Get your images in the
March
night
12th.
before.
Yeah.
If you go to upload it last minute and you're having problems and we can't help you, that's unfortunate. So don't wait till the last minute. We all wait till the last minute, but don't do it. Because once it's cut off, we're going to be working, compiling, randomizing, and the doors will be locked. And pay attention to, again, just read the rules thoroughly to make sure they're followed. If you have any questions, if you're watching this or watching the recording, feel free to reach out to myself or to Nick. We'll be happy to answer any questions you have. But just check your. I can actually see on the back end, we had a couple entries. I don't know if they were paid for or that they're permanent, but the resolution was way off. So make sure just do your resolutions. It's 4,000 pixels long edge, whether that's lengthwise or up, whatever is the longer, 4,000 pixels long edge. Um, and that can be the biggest bummer. I can tell you how many competitions I've judged that's like, oh, this is a great image, but the resolution is clearly wrong. And it just is all pixelated on our screen, so it doesn't do well. But you're like, I see that there was a great image here. There's just a minor mistake on the entering end. So cross your T's and dot your I's.
And everyone knows that they enter through printcompetition.com. It's a
Yep,
site that
and
we go to.
yeah, I think you should be able to find all the details on Maine PPA's site. Again, if you're here now or if you are watching this after the fact. But if you go into printcompetition.com on the main website, I will pull it up right now. When you can sign up for, I don't know if you have to have a membership. You might have to, it's not very expensive. You can pay per quarter like 15 or $20, like if this interests you. Um, and then you can enter, and I think it's something like $12 an image if you're a member. If you're interested in a critique, this is something new we're doing this year. You can pay for that critique. Just like we kind of roughly critiqued some stuff tonight, one of the approved jurors will critique your image after the fact. So let's say competition's over, your image wasn't talked about, you want to hear more, you have up till like Monday, I think it is, to buy a critique. And then once that's cut off, I'll see who's ordered critiques and I will assign that to the different jurors who are going to be judging. At least a couple of the jurors, I'm sure, are willing to. I know that a couple of them can't do it, but we'll assign those, and then you'll get a critique. And the nice thing about printcompetition.com, if you're new to this, if you want to learn, try to we're in a tight window, but you can find another state and you can watch live recordings where you can jump on the Zoom like this, hear the jars, and then watch the print competition live on printcompetition.com. If you go to the main site, and you go and log in if you have an account, which you need to do, you'll see all of the upcoming competitions around the country for different states and guilds. I know I'm doing one tomorrow, I think it is, for someone in Texas. And usually those all have links to where you can kind of watch that stuff live. You get the audio from Zoom and you watch the images on the screen on printcompetition.com. You can also do things like go through the archives at printcompetition.com, and you can, during a competition, if you've never watched and you hear a challenge and the jurors talk about it, you can find the recorded audio of those. So you could go on search and you could just search main PPA last year and then listen to some images that were talked about last year. So there's a lot of cool stuff there, and it's a good learning. Like hopefully you heard some nugget tonight of something we talked about an image, and that might have been helpful to consider. When you watch print competitions and hear jurors when they speak about images, I can tell you myself that someone else, I think Judy might have mentioned it earlier, like that helped my craft dramatically from when I started to you kind of get that kick in the butt and all of your images suck. And then hopefully you start to get better at it. And, that doesn't mean that everything you shoot's a merit image, but it really goes to a point of kind of creating a better work. And the things you learn are more in your mind when you're shooting. So it's not just about awards or merits for degrees, but um, it it's kind of like school.
So just to expand upon what James was saying, this is if you click on image competition on our website, everything we've outlined is right here. So the 12 elements of print competition, all the deadlines, like we have down here, we have like where you can watch it. If you do plan to come hang out with us at Smitty's in Topsom, please register for it. It's on right here. The link was right here. And yeah, so trying to think if there's anything else. I'm realizing, do we have the rules on here or did they drop off?
So if the helpful links at the top shows the 12 elements of a print competition. That's helpful. That's something we talked about earlier that you can
Yeah,
kind of look up and you can kind of see that more in detail. And then if you go, just for the sake of showing people what it looks like in case you haven't
right
seen
here.
it, if you go to, nope, that'll be how
Oh,
you watch
oh yeah,
it.
that's how you watch it. Sorry.
But go up to just the main, there was a link for printcompetition.com.
Here it
There you go,
is.
right there.
Yeah.
So if you pull this up, are you able to log in? Do you have a login, Rebecca?
Yeah. No, I'm just
Perfect.
kidding. So
What's your password?
I know, right? Let's see if that works.
So when you log in,
If it'll be successful. Here it is. Okay.
you can see you'll find our organization on there, and you
Here's
can see there's
ours right
one. So
here.
if you click on that one right there, that'll show you we got our
Oh,
jurors
the
there at the
rules are
top.
here.
And
Sorry.
then you've got your rules right there. I'm circulating on my screen, but I'm no longer sharing.
Yeah.
So you've got
Yeah.
all the rules there. And if you go back to the last page, it should be pretty straightforward. But again, if you have any questions, so go back to that last page real quick. You see right at the top, there's two questions. Are you a member of the MPPA? You'll want to pick that. And whether it's your first time entering, you'll want to pick no or yes on that. And then when you scroll down, you can see create new image entry. You'll click on that. Go ahead and click on that. Oh, you can't see it.
Well, yeah. So what happens is like every year I pay just the basic, but you can honestly, it's worth it to just pay the $20 and you get to see all of the things that James is talking about, the bat competitions and things like that. So actually here, let me just, oh dang, I don't have it in there. Sorry. Okay. Sorry guys, I thought I had it in there. But if you do that, you can see all the archives.
Yeah, here,
So
just
like,
if you want to
yeah.
just let me share real quick, I'll go ahead
Sure,
and
definitely. Sorry. I thought mine was still active, but I must have stopped it for now. So here's
okay. Is my screen up here right in front of me? Are we looking at my screen?
hold on. Let me
Silver. Yes, that says James.
Right here in front of us?
yes, yep, at the
Yep.
top. Yep.
You see the print competition site?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So you can see the screen, you'll click new entry. Um, it shows you the deadlines, that sort of thing. You're going to put in your image title. That's where
Hmm.
you put in your title, what category you're in. There's a bunch of categories. If you have any questions, again, feel free to reach out. There's an album. So if you're entering a wedding album or a family album, you can put all your separate images in there. The other categories are animal, artist. Now, artist, if you're not familiar, is for like highly manipulated things. People create pieces out of different elements. So if you're not familiar with it, don't enter it. How's that? Um, Commercial can be almost anything, but that's usually, you're doing work for businesses, that sort of thing. Fine art's a pretty open category that can be almost anything that you consider fine art. And then the more detailed ones are things like landscape, portrait, reportage, which is photojournalism. So, photojournalism should be something that has a high impact value or emotional connection, something that you would feel like is newsworthy or draws emotion. Um, for a reportage. Sports, if you shoot sports or shoot sports teams, that sort of thing, there's a category for that. And then finally, wedding. And our wedding category is day of wedding, so it must be shot on the actual wedding day. If you want to enter a stylized wedding image where you have a bride and groom and it's a stylized shoot or just something you're playing with models, that would just go in like a regular portrait category. So that wouldn't belong in weddings. Because if you put it in weddings and it's not a day of wedding, it would be disqualified. Um, and then beyond that, the critique, you don't have to choose it now. Again, this is my first time, but this should work. So you can keep it as no, or you can pay for it now. It's $10. Um, and then whether it's client image award qualified. So if you shot it for a paying client, you can click yes. And later on, you'll be able to go back and uh, pay for that critique after the competition if you decide you want to. So let's pick a category, create entry, and then it'll take you back to the screen, and this will be what it is right here. And then you'll hit upload and then, upload your image. And then you're all set. And then once you're done, you can change it up until you pay for it. So you could have 10 images in here, and when you're ready, you pay all the image fees and you're good to go. Hopefully that makes sense. And since we're recording this, you can kind of follow those guidelines after the fact. And then, real quick, like I mentioned, if this interests you, you can go into the archives here from different states. So you could search any maker. Like you could go all years and you could say, hey, let's look at James's terrible images and hit go. And then here's all the
Oh,
images.
James.
Here's all the images I've ever entered. And it's like, oh, we'll click on this one here. And here's this image that was entered in 2019. And then you could hit audio, and if it was discussed, you can kind of hear the discussion on it. So, yeah, hopefully
The
that helps.
the rules are also on the image comp page on the website. They're right where the jurors are. So if
Oh,
you're
okay. Sorry. I like was glancing and didn't see it. So,
okay.
um, yeah. The biggest thing I want to encourage people to do is just enter. Like, we've kind of talked about what to look for, but don't let that stop you. Like we want you to grow. So whether that's through an initial critique with us right now or during image competition, see how you do with the scores. That's one of the reasons why we brought on the critique after image competition as well. So when you've, you know, gone through image competition, say your image doesn't get discussed, you have an opportunity to get some more feedback, and it's just a great opportunity to grow. So please, like like James and everyone was saying, take it with a grain of salt, but we want this to be like a way for you to look at your images more critically, but at the same time grow from it. So I hope that's been helpful. Does anyone have any questions about any other process before we wrap it up? Okay. Well, I want to say thank you to Dean and Judy and James. They have volunteered their time tonight to do this, and this is extremely helpful. Like we really can't run this organization without its volunteers. So thank you for volunteering again tonight. And if you're interested in volunteering, we have plenty of volunteering opportunities coming up. Not only with image competition, but with convention and things like that. If you are on our mailing list, which I think most of you are, be sure to like look out for volunteer opportunities. We had a couple emails go out already about that and some signups. Awesome. But as it gets closer, we might have even more opportunities available. And even if you see something that isn't on that list that you'd like to help with, just let us know. Like, just reach out to one of the board members, or send an email to the info@MAPPA email, and a couple other things too, just to clarify, because in the past people don't understand what our banquet is. So our annual awards banquet happens on Saturday night during convention, and this is an opportunity to celebrate everyone who did well in competition. So we have a really good time. We recognize not only the image competition award winners, but we recognize volunteers. Um, speakers go to it. So if you really want to like rub elbows with like Meg this year, or whoever is like really cool, that you're like, oh, I want to go see them. Like this is a great opportunity to go see them. Opportunity to just like geek out, and we have a dance floor, good food. There's an after hours party after too. We would love to have you guys come check it out. It's the heart of like kind of like a celebration of everything we do all year. So just to clarify what that is, that's what that is. So when you see emails, consider signing up. So even if you decide not to enter a competition, we'd love to have you at the watch party at Smitty Cinema. We'd love to have you, come to banquet and hang out with us. Like this is about celebrating our members and having a good time. So that's my spiel. A lot of this can be found on our website under the events tab. And other than that, if you have any questions, visit the image competition section, and James's email is also on there. Please use it sparingly because he is a volunteer. But he may be able to point you in the right direction for something. So, all
Yeah,
right.
happy to help. If you have any questions on the
Yeah.
rules, just please feel free to reach out, and we'll help where we can.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, with that, I'm going to end this recording, and awesome.